Hello and welcome to Sci Fi Night LIGHT, where we talk about random topics that somehow relate to sci-fi and horror. So, from cinema to straight-to-video to DVD to Netflix, it seems like there are more movies being released than ever before. But even among so many releases, there are true classics that will always stand the test of time and be remembered fondly forever. But were they always as beloved as they are now? Believe it or not, but there are actually very many films we call classics today that were too ahead of our time when it first released and not appreciated by contemporary critics. Or perhaps the film just needed to grow on people. For whatever reason, let's check out some true classic films that were slammed upon their initial release. Let's start off old school and the 1954 monster classic Godzilla, one of the most influential films to ever come out of Japan, about the giant monster of the same name who rises from nuclear ashes to wreak havoc on Japan. Being a very obvious criticism of the dangers of the atomic bomb, which Japan had felt firsthand at the end of the Second World War, the film holds up surprisingly well despite being over 70 years old, and actually has kind of a dark, grim tone that I appreciate. However, Japanese critics were quick to trash the film, as many people deemed it as offensive exploitation the Japanese had suffered due to the nuclear bombs used against Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The film's director, Ishiro Honda, had this to say about the criticism the film received. They called it grotesque junk and said it looked like something you'd spit up. Apparently, the film was even criticized for being unrealistic, because, that's why we go to see a fictional giant monster movie, for everything to be just like real life. It seemed like critics at the time didn't understand that Honda and the other filmmakers were just as critical of the American use of nuclear force as the critics. They just used a monster metaphor to say it. Was it a bit too soon? Well, only really the Japanese can answer that themselves, as they were the ones who suffered from it, but the film has gone on to be revered as a true classic, a staple of the monster movie genre, and luckily we all remember it fondly today. If I had to choose my favorite action film ever, it'd probably be a tie between Die Hard and Predator. And guess what? Despite being one of the best action films ever made, critics in 1987 did not give Predator much of a chance.
Fuck you, asshole.
The New York Times called the film grisly and dull with few surprises, and reading the article, the critic says that he found it more interesting analyzing the plans of the film than watching the action. What the fuck? Is this guy serious? What kind of weird-ass botanist is this doing movie reviews? Cinefantastique wrote that the militarized monster movie tires under its own derivative weight. Variety only called the film slightly above average, and the Los Angeles Times called it arguably one of the emptiest, feeblest, most derivative scripts ever made as a major studio movie. God damn, that is harsh criticism.
One ugly motherfucker.
Imagine if these critics saw any of the Transformers movies. They'd probably get a fucking brain aneurysm. It's like these critics dissed the film for something it wasn't trying to be. It's not a plot-heavy film, and that's fine. Not every film needs that. It's a straightforward, extremely well-made, exciting action film with great effects. Let's face it does everything it sets out to do, but for some reason these critics were expecting something else. What about Star Wars? It was a truly revolutionizing film and actually generally well received, but not without its fair share of hate. The New Yorker said that the film had no emotional grip. Wait, what? Were they not there when Obi-Wan Kenobi was killed? Or what about the destruction of Alder? Oh, no, you know what? Fuck it, never mind. New York Magazine wrote, "Strip Star Wars of its often striking images and its high-falutin scientific jargon, and you get a story, characters, and dialogue of overwhelming banality." Ouch! The New Republic went even further and insulted fans of a film, saying Star Wars, quote, "was made for those, particularly males, who carry a portable shrine within them of their adolescence, a chalice of self that was better then, before the world's affairs, or, in any complex way, sex intruded." Seriously? God damn, this review is basically dumbing down anyone who likes the film into overgrown children. And for them saying that sex comes in the way of Star Wars, they obviously haven't seen the 700 million Star Wars porno parodies made out there. The absolute worst trashing that the film received has got to be from John Simon, who not only completely trashed the film, but again, also those who liked it.
Obviously, let's face it, they are for children or for childish adults. They're not for adult mentalities. They're brutalizing children, they're stultifying children, they're making children dumber than they need to be.
It's a fucking film, not a crack epidemic. He's taking things too far. I mean, what the hell? Did Darth Vader fuck this guy's wife or something? Seriously, what's this asshole's problem?
Who the fuck is this asshole?
Despite this, the film held up much better than a lot of critics thought and remains one of the most popular and treasured franchises of all time. So yeah, eat shit, Paul Simon.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
Stanley Kubrick can be a very polarizing guy, and while many people know that Stephen King hates his adaptation of The Shining, it's a film that actually didn't do so well critically upon release, and it wasn't until years later that critics began acknowledging it as a horror masterpiece. The New York Times were quick to trash it, writing, "The supernatural story knows frustratingly little rhyme or reason. Even the film's most startling, horrific images seem overbearing and perhaps even irrelevant." Well, okay, to be fair, there is some really weird random stuff in there.
Yes. I still don't get it.
But still though. Also, many people see this film as Jack Nicholson's defining performance, but Variety slammed his performance, saying, "With everything to work with, Kubrick has teamed with jumpy Jack Nicholson to destroy all that was so terrifying about Stephen King's bestseller." Roger Ebert didn't even review it on his show, but wrote that he couldn't connect to any of the characters, amongst other complaints. He has, however, since then backtracked and praised the film. What's worse is that the film even received not one, but 2 Razzie Awards, one for Worst Actress and one for Worst Director. Are they fucking serious? Imagine that today, Stanley Kubrick being nominated for a Razzie. Nowadays, the film shows up on many best horror films of all time lists, a testament to ahead of its time it truly was.
Here's Johnny!
As with Godzilla, another old-school film that holds up surprisingly well is Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho, about a murder mystery at the Bates Motel with a legendary twist. Now, reviews weren't entirely poor when it was first released, but there was a fair share of hate thrown at it. Once again, the New York Times trashed it, writing, "There is not an abundance of subtlety or the lately familiar Hitchcock bent towards significant and colorful scenery in this obviously low-budget job." British critic C.A. Lejeune was so offended by the film that she walked out before it was over and then quit her job as a critic because of how much she hated it. Really? It's not like this was an adaptation of Mein Kampf. I mean, seriously? Other scathing reviews called the film gimmicky, which is interesting considering it has one of the oldest and best twists in the suspense genre, and some critics called it a smudge on Hitchcock's career.
It's difficult to describe the way that the twisting of the well, I won't dwell upon it.
Nobody remembers it that way now though, and it's frequently something to show film students, once again proving how ahead of his time Hitchcock was. We're gonna finish off with one of the films I've talked about most on this channel, another legendary genre film, 1979's Alien, a film I truly adore, and it may very well be the best sci-fi horror film ever made, telling the now classic tale of a crew of a Nostromo fending off a vicious alien xenomorph. But its current status didn't stop the film from getting a lot of really bad reviews when it was first released. How bad? Well, David Denby of New York Magazine said, "Occasionally, one sees a film that uses the emotional resources of movies with such utter cynicism that one feels sickened by the medium itself. Alien is so, quote, effective, it has practically turned me off movies altogether. The movie is terrifying, but not in a way that is remotely enjoyable." Seriously? This was a film that turned this guy off movies? God damn, I'd imagine he would probably kill himself if he saw the new Mummy movie. The LA Examiner called the film an overblown B-movie, technically impressive but awfully portentous and as difficult to sit through as a black mass sung in Latin. Yeah, they just compared this film to a satanic ritual. Films Illustrated went even further, seeming almost personally offended by the film and calling Alien a horrid film, skillful and studied in its nastiness, and there is little the cast can do to mitigate its manipulative horror. Time magazine called Alien a, quote, cinematic bastard, and claimed that Ridley Scott settled for competency or less, before comparing it to Jaws 2. What the fuck? Hey, this was early Ridley Scott, not Alien Covenant Ridley Scott, so no chance in hell he settled for anything less than fantastic here. Finally, Cinefantastique called Alien just another shocker. Well, this film has stood the test of time and showed that it's not just another anything. If anything, it's the standard that others tried to copy.
You take responsibility?
Yes, I'll take responsibility. Get him out of it.
So this obviously isn't me saying don't listen to critics, they don't know shit. It also doesn't mean that 50 Shades of Grey will be seen as a beloved classic in 50 years, but a lot of the time strong and unique visions aren't always understood in their time. There are many artists whose work was never appreciated until long after they died, and in many ways the art and culture that lasts the longest can take some time to get established. When a new standard is set, it changes things up, it ruffles feathers, and can at times almost be a bit offensive or aggressive. As in some ways it challenges our preconceived notions of how films and other art should be. Some can see and understand these works that were ahead of our time, some can't. But the most important thing is that we revere them with the respect that they deserve once we broaden our own horizons and actually understand the art form. So that about does it for this episode of Sci Fi Night LIGHT. We hope you enjoyed it. And do you have any other suggestions? What classic film that was trashed upon release is your favorite? Let us know in the comments below. I'm your host, Sebastian Vendel Martinez, and we'll catch you guys next time.
You want to see the most beautiful thing I've ever filmed? And this bag was just dancing with me.
What the fuck is this?